Hey, everybody, we're the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. I'm Dr. Kristen.
And I'm Dr. Erin.
And you are incredibly welcome to our coverage today. We are two social scientists who are obsessed with the idea that curiosity can change the world. And we are actually so obsessed with it that we've created an entire company around that premise. Our YouTube channel here serves to be a cultivator of that curiosity. So all in the service of the idea that we need to live more empathetic lives, and that empathy is actually a mental posture rather than an emotional response. Here on the YouTube channel, you will find conversations to that end about everything from why flags are so important to people to what exactly Falcon and the Winter Soldier has to say about ableism, to why we really loved 2021's Minari as a movie that everyone has to watch in terms of just human existence. We talk to each other all the time. I think we're up to like 7 different platforms we do that on.
Too many and not enough.
We turn the cameras on for y'all because we love to have the conversation with you as well. So please like and subscribe on this YouTube channel, hit the thumbs up on the video, comment below, and let's continue this conversation about today's topic.
We are here today as a part of our ongoing exploration of countries around the world and their relationship with being colonized, their colonizers and their culture. We're calling it the Colonizers World Tour. And boy, are we having a good time. We're up to chapter 5. We're on Portuguese colonies. We've learned a lot about Portugal, not everything, but a lot. And a lot about these places. We're on Mozambique, if you saw our 101 video previously. And today's the bit of art that we cover, documentary, film, whatever we can find from that country. And we're talking about the 2019 film Redemption, which is the first Mozambican film ever on Netflix. So it's a historic, Netflix is opening and expanding, thankfully, its content to a lot of international films from a lot of places we might not necessarily think to bring international films in from. So we are very, very grateful to Netflix for doing this. And but we didn't like the movie.
No. A couple things to understand about us, first of all, is we're not big like crime boss mafia movie fans.
Not so much.
And that's what this is. So I was excited by the summary, which is a man gets out of prison and has to figure out how to do life, especially once he finds out that his mom took on a really big debt while he was in prison.
Yeah.
So combine that with the word redemption as the title. I was like, oh, this is going to be an interesting exploration of how do you put a new wine into old wineskins kind of thing. How do you navigate all this? And I think that answer was somewhere in this.
I think that's
but maybe
generous.
Not.
I think that's generous. Yeah. By the time I got to like half an hour left in this movie, I had no idea why it was titled Redemption. So it follows, like, too long didn't read. It follows this guy, Bruno. He's just served 4 years in prison after being involved in organized crime. Comes out to his girlfriend, Mia, and their daughter, and tries to rebuild his life. Finds out that his mother died from cancer and took out a very large loan on her house to pay for cancer treatments. And that he has like 7 days to pay back $30,000. It's not great. And so he gets, at the same time as he finds this out, his mates from the organized crime crew find him wandering around the town in Mozambique and bring him
Which they're
back.
Never clear about. It could be the capital. It could be a random town. We're never actually told.
Yeah, we're not sure what town it is, which is why I said the town in Mozambique. I wasn't being flippant. And then he gets involved again in this organized crime life to try and get this money to pay off his mom's debt. His relationship with Mia deteriorates. And like, spoilers ahoy, folks, like everybody dies. Everybody dies at the end of the movie, except for Bruno and the baby. And he doesn't get the money. He doesn't get redemption. The suitcase opens and that was like the biggest. I was like, well, at least he has the money and he can like go try and redeem his life with his daughter after Mia's been killed by the crime bosses, like henchmen. No, it's just full of papers. There's no money. So maybe
and if it's like the loan documents, he just opens up the case and lets the loan documents fly.
It was unclear. I was not emotionally invested, partly because Dr. Kristen's right. These types of movies aren't our jam. I don't watch them in English when they're about American crime bosses. I was not a fan of The Sopranos. No judgment if you were, but like it's just not me. So I wasn't emotionally invested. And to me, I am fascinated by returning citizens, formerly incarcerated folks, and like their journey and how they grapple with very often facing a lot of stigmas and barriers because of their incarceration. And that wasn't the story either. So.
There was a couple times where I thought it was going to go that direction. Like Bruno keeps, we have a montage of him trying to get a mechanic's job because that's very clearly what his skill set is. And then he gets one. And then about a scene and a half later, he just starts working with Abdul again. And I think it's one of those, there's a couple places where I was like, okay, if we had spent more time with Mia, if Mia had a friend, if Mia had somebody that we could talk to and Mia could tell us like, well, I mean, it's so hard. There's no, like if Mia served only to be the thing he should choose and doesn't.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't have her own kind of existence.
No.
And this hit me, if this was like, just to call it, throw this out here, if this was made by a bunch of like Americans, I'd call this like try hard art house cinema.
Yeah.
We should also say too, this movie was entirely crowdfunded.
Yeah.
So it's entirely possible too that like this is the kind of cinema that Mozambique folks like. We could not find any reviews that Google Translate would translate for us that tells us that is true. Lots and lots of coverage of how historic it is, lots of coverage of how grateful we are that Netflix picked it up. And I think if you are a fan of like the nitty gritty kind of stuff and you love ambiguous endings, of which there are a lot of people out there, this could be a great flick.
Sure.
The acting's good.
It is pretty good. Yeah.
It's just not for us.
It's not for us. And I was holding out hope that like, even if I didn't enjoy the film, I would learn something about Mozambique. I mean, I did in a sense, and we learned this from our friends at Geography Now, which we could like call ourselves Geograpeeps now because we watch like literally all the Geography Now videos. But they explained like the linguistic differences in Portuguese, like dialects between Angolan and Mozambique and Brazilian Portuguese and Portugal Portuguese. And boy, could you tell the difference. I think the film we watched on Angola was probably more in like official Portuguese than like Angolan Portuguese. But this sounded again similar to Portuguese, but very different. And that was cool. We learned that there's a lot of prejudice and bias against mixed race folks in this movie called Mulatto. That's the nickname Bruno has. And like Abdul doesn't want to bring in a mulatto because you can't trust them. So I guess I learned those two things about Mozambique, but that seems really essentialist.
I mean, and it's shot in Mozambique, and it's they are drinking the local beer and they're eating the food they always eat.
That's true. All of that was very like lived in.
Yeah, and to me, who's been to Malawi, it just felt very like that. A lot of the geography of that part of Southern Africa. And so that was really kind of fun to watch. As we talked about yesterday, one of the recognized languages of Mozambique is also the language of Malawi, which is Chewa, one of the tribal languages. And so that was kind of fun for me to see like, oh, this isn't that different. Because then once you get down to South Africa, it's a real different vibe. And so that's also interesting, especially because we had two different colonial powers between Malawi and Mozambique, that a lot of the kind of vibe and geography and even some of the foods are really similar, which is interesting. It's British versus Portuguese, and those are pretty pretty different colonial powers and priorities.
Yep.
But yeah, it was all the characters were too one-dimensional for us to really dig into anything about Mozambican culture, which again, like, the movie doesn't have to do.
Right.
And like, obviously it was successful for Netflix to pick it up. Like, obviously it has fans. And if, like, again, I'll say it again, if you love mafia movies, please let us know if this one's a good example of it. It's just not, it's not for us.
It's not for us. Maybe it's for you. So mixed feelings and emotions about redemption, I think. But boy, did we have a harrowing experience spending this week with Mozambique and everything that we learned that is going on there. Past, present, and future. But I think that's a wrap on our Mozambican coverage for the Colonizers World Tour. Our last stop on Portuguese colonies, Portugal didn't really have it. Like, it had the big 3 colonies that we've talked about. All the other ones were little ports and smaller, not really enough for us to dig into. So we're going back to the source. Next week, we're going to be talking about Portugal and maybe asking the question, why did Portugal become a colonizer? And exploring some interesting things about Portugal that relate to chocolate statues and Harry Potter. Spoiler alert. Hopefully that whetted your appetite to learn more about Portugal. We'll see you guys then.
Bye.